I remember the moment so clearly, like someone pressed record inside my head. I was standing in front of the refrigerator, the cool air brushing my cheeks as I held a packet of deli meat fresh, good quality, the kind I only buy when I'm feeling a little generous with myself. I'd just spent nearly $200 on groceries. At 69, carrying those heavy bags from the car to the kitchen is no easy task. My knees sound like cracking branches every time I climb the stairs. My back wakes me before sunrise almost every morning. But I still did it. For my family. For her. I had just placed the deli pack in my hand back into the fridge when I heard it clipped, nothing like the warm voice I remembered from years ago. Don't even think about touching that food. Marcus' family is coming for dinner. I froze. Not physically, even though my hand did stop midair, but inside. Inside, something stalled. I turned slowly, like I was afraid of what I'd see. And there she was. My daughter, Jade, framed in the doorway like an unwelcome surprise. Her arms were crossed so tightly, I wondered if she could still breathe. Her eyes were little stones, cold, polished, unmovable. Her lips were pressed into a line I didn't recognize. This was not the little girl who used to run into my arms after school. Not the teenager who used to cry into my chest when she got her heart broken the first time. No, this woman standing in my kitchen felt like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. I waited a second, two, three, because some part of me still believed she'd laugh. That she'd soften. That she'd say, "Mom, I'm just kidding." And wrap her arms around me like she used to. But she didn't. Her silence was louder than her words. I swallowed hard, the kitchen suddenly feeling too small. And then, footsteps. Slow, confident. Decorated with entitlement, a tall figure appeared behind her. Moving in with the quiet arrogance of someone who believes every room belongs to him. Marcus. My son. Always dressed like he was on the front page of a magazine. Always smiling a smile that never quite made it to his eyes. That smile, it made me uneasy the first time I met him. Something about it felt rehearsed, like he was performing for an audience only he could see. He placed a hand on Jade's shoulder. Not loving, not gentle. More like claiming, as if she were property. "If my wife said it, that's how it's going to be," he said from the hallway. Voice smooth like oiled steel. I still held the deli meat. My fingers were numb. I wasn't sure if it was from the cold or what was happening. He stepped closer, his voice annoyingly calm. "Mom," he began, and every time he called me that, it felt like he was borrowing a title he hadn't earned. "You heard her. Don't touch anything in that refrigerator, nothing. My family will be here in 2 hours. We can't serve them just anything. This is important to us. Important to them, more important than me. Their own mother. The woman who carried Jade in her body, who sacrificed, who worried, who prayed for her every single night." My tongue was heavy, my heart heavier. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. "I paid for that food. I carried it in. I stocked that fridge for you." But nothing came out. Because in that moment, I felt something break inside me. Not glass shattering. Not fireworks exploding. No. It was small, quiet, almost polite. Like a dry twig snapping under someone's shoe. I slowly placed the deli meat back inside the fridge. I closed the door gently. The way you do when you're trying not to wake a sleeping child. I wiped my hands on my apron. Busy work? Something to do. So I wouldn't start shaking. Then, believe it or not, I smiled. Not because I was okay. Not because this was funny. But because the truth hit me like cold water. My daughter no longer saw me as her mother. She saw me as an obstacle. A piece of useless furniture she didn't know where to store. Something extra. An inconvenience. And somehow that realization was quiet, almost peaceful. Because once you see something clearly, You can stop pretending it's something else. I'm going to my room, I said. Voice steady though, everything inside me felt like jelly. Enjoy your dinner. No sarcasm. No anger. Just release. I walked toward the stairs. Slowly, because you can't rush dignity. I could feel their eyes on my back the whole way. I didn't turn around. Didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my face. Every step was a battle. My body wanted to collapse, but my spine held me upright. Straight, proud, refusing to crack. When I reached the top of the stairs, my chest ached like someone had squeezed it tight. I closed my bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed where my husband and I once slept side by side for 30 years. The same bed where I wept when he died. The same bed where I agreed to leave behind my little house so I could move in here. Mom, this is your house too. You'll always have a place with us. That's what she told me 2 years ago. When I sold everything I had. When I gave her every last dollar of savings to help buy this home. So we could live together. So we could be a family again. But now I know. They only wanted the money. Not me. Downstairs, voices floated through the air like a cruel reminder. Laughter, music, a doorbell. Her in-laws arrived. The family they wanted to impress. I listened to Jade's sweet voice. A voice she never used on me anymore. As she welcomed them inside, I heard Marcus offering drinks, like the perfect host. I was upstairs, silent, invisible, like a child punished for misbehaving. Sent away. Dismissed. The only crime I committed was buying the very food they were about to enjoy. I moved toward the window. Outside, I could see my rosebush, the ones I planted with my own hands. The small lemon tree I'd put in the ground when I first moved here, full of hope. The little herb garden I took care of every morning. Life that I nurtured. Life that belonged to me. My hands trembled. My throat tightened. How did I get here? How did the woman I raised become someone who would lock me out of my own kitchen? I sat in the old chair I brought from my previous home, the only piece of furniture Jade allowed me to keep. She said my things didn't match the style of the new house, so everything else was sold or thrown away. I placed my hands in my lap, stared at the lemon tree, and tried to understand. When exactly? My daughter stopped loving me. And that's where part 1 ends. Hours slipped by like slow-moving clouds. Downstairs, I could hear them. Their voices floating up through the floorboards. Laughter, glass clinks, forks, scraping plates. The sound of a family enjoying a meal they didn't earn. Enjoying food I bought. Meanwhile, I sat upstairs like a stranger. In a house I helped pay for. They didn't call me. They didn't bring me a plate. They didn't even knock. I wasn't sick. I wasn't tired. I simply wasn't wanted. The music faded eventually. The laughter softened. I heard the front door open, then close. Goodbyes and thank yous floating behind them. Marcus's family was gone. The house settled into silence. I waited. Not out of fear, out of dignity. I refused to walk downstairs like a beggar. While their guests were still there. When the quiet finally swallowed the house, I rose from my bed and wrapped my sweater around my shoulders. My hands were cold, and somehow, my heart even colder. The hallway was dark. The stairs creaked under my weight, each sound reminding me that I was no longer welcome where I lived. Downstairs, the kitchen light over the stove was still on. A small square of yellow in the darkness. I stepped in. The smell of food still hung in the air. Roasted chicken, warm bread, herbs. It was the kind of dinner families enjoy together. But I wasn't part of that family anymore. Dirty plates towered in the sink. Wine glasses scattered like forgotten promises. A few crumbs on the table, half a lemon. A wrinkled napkin beside an empty bottle. They could have at least cleaned up. But why would they? I was the unpaid maid. The invisible labor, the quiet shadow who was supposed to tidy up and never complain. I walked to the refrigerator and pulled the door open. The cool air washed over my face. Inside, nearly everything was gone. My groceries, the ones I bought that afternoon, straining my back to carry, had been devoured. Only scraps remained. A small container of rice, cold and clumpy. Someone had pushed it to the back, like it didn't matter. I reached for it, not because I loved rice, but because it was the only thing left that belonged to me. I peeled the lid. The condensation clung to my fingers. I grabbed a spoon and ate it. Right there, standing in the pale light of the fridge. The kitchen was quiet. Only the hum of the refrigerator kept me company. And as I chewed that cold, tasteless rice, I tasted something else. Humiliation. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind, the kind you swallow whole. Because there's no one around. Who cares to hear you spit it out? I felt my hands start to tremble. Not because of fear, but anger. Slow, patient, cold like the rice on my tongue. As I stood there, I realized something disturbing. This didn't start tonight. It had been happening slowly, sneaky, like a thief testing windows. Before breaking in, a comment here, a dismissive glance there. Small exclusions that seemed harmless, until they piled up, brick by brick, into a wall, designed to keep me out. I swallowed another spoonful of rice. A memory flashed. Jade handing me paperwork over the last few months. Just bank forms, Mom, nothing important. Just sign here, I'm in a rush. She always rushed. Always distracted. Always impatient. When it came to my questions, so I signed. I trusted her, without reading, because she was my daughter. But now, doubt crawled up my spine. What had I signed? I closed the fridge, set the empty container in the sink, and stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet. Then I did something I never thought I'd have to do in my own home. I cleaned up. In silence. I washed the plates they dirtied, scrubbed the pans they used, wiped down the counters they stained. I erased every trace of their presence, like a ghost tidying up after the living. Not because I wanted to, not because they deserved it, but because it kept me from crying. It kept my mind busy, so my heart wouldn't shatter. When the kitchen was spotless again, I stood in the middle of the floor and looked around. It no longer looked like a place where I belonged. I'd spent years cooking meals for my family, cleaning messes, laughing with my husband, singing to my little girl. Now it felt unfamiliar, like a stage set for someone else's life. I walked to the living room and went through the drawers quietly, careful not to wake them. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for answers. Documents, papers, something that proved what I feared. The desk was locked. A small silver keyhole, like a mouth refusing to speak. I searched for the key. The kitchen drawers, the hallway, the shelf by the door. Nothing. I felt a chill in my chest. I hurried back upstairs to my room, dropped to my knees, and pulled out the box, where I kept my important papers, old house documents, marriage certificate, Frank's death certificate, receipts, photos. I flipped through them, one by one, my breath getting faster. Where was it? The deed. The document proving I'd put $50,000 into this house, that I owned part of it, that I belonged here. It wasn't there. Gone. A panic rose in my throat. I dumped every paper on the floor, searching, digging, hoping I just misplaced it. Nothing. It wasn't lost. It was taken. A calm washed over me. Not peace, but a terrifying clarity. My own daughter had gone through my private things and removed the only proof tying me to this home. My hands went still. My breath slowed. I wasn't mistaken. I wasn't imagining things. I had been robbed. Not by a stranger. Not by a thief in the night. But by the child I once carried inside me. I sat there, on the floor of my room, surrounded by scattered papers, my life, spread out like puzzle pieces. But I didn't cry. Not this time. You only cry when there's hope left. Instead, I started to think. All right, I whispered to myself. If this is a game, then I'll learn the rules. I gathered every paper. With silent, shaking hands, placed them back in the box, hid it somewhere else. Somewhere only I would look. Then I washed my face, combed my hair, and lay down on my bed. I didn't sleep all night. I watched the shadows move across my ceiling, thinking, plotting, remembering every moment that led me here. I thought about Jade. As a baby, as a young girl, as a woman, I tried to find the moment she stopped being mine. The sun was barely rising when I got up, smoothed my bedsheets, and walked downstairs. Jade came into the kitchen, all bright and cheerful, a tone reserved for everyone but me. "Good morning, Mom," she said, smiling as if last night never happened. I smiled back, a quiet smile, because now I finally understood what game we were playing. A game of patience, a game of silence, a game of pretending, until the perfect moment arrived. And now it was my turn. The food she tried to keep from me, the refrigerator she guarded, the freezer she thought only she controlled. She opened those doors to hide the truth, but all she did was expose herself. Because the night she took everything from me, I began taking everything back, one quiet step at a time. And that was the day my revenge began. People like to say things fall apart suddenly. That one day everything is fine, and the next, it's gone. But that's not how life really works. Things don't break all at once. They crack quietly, slowly, until one day you realize you've been living inside a broken thing for years. That's how it was with Jade. 4 days after discovering the missing deed, I walked around the house, performing my duties like always. Cooking, cleaning, watering the garden. But inside, my mind was traveling backward, examining every memory, to find where everything began to shift. I wanted to understand how the little girl I once kissed goodnight became a woman who could steal from her own mother and sleep peacefully afterward. So I went back to the beginning. Jade was born when I was 26. I remember being terrified. Her delivery was hard. I spent months confined to bed. The doctor worried I would lose her. Frank, my husband, worked double shifts just to keep us afloat. My daughter was bossing me around. We were young and poor, but we had dreams. Small ones, humble ones. A house someday. A safe yard for kids to play in. Nothing fancy. When she finally arrived, all those worries melted. She had a full head of dark hair, and eyes so big, they looked like they held the whole world. I fed her, bathed her, rocked her to sleep every night. I would hum the same lullaby my mother used to sing to me. Soft, gentle, like a promise. I will always protect you. Frank adored her. He'd come home exhausted, but always found one more ounce of energy left just for her. He'd hold her, make silly faces, pretend he wasn't bone-tired. That was love. Simple, wordless, true. She took her first steps in our tiny living room, pulling herself up on the couch, legs wobbling like a baby deer. She took 3 steps before falling, and I burst into tears, because sometimes joy is too big for the heart to hold quietly. My daughter was bossing me around. I called Frank at work. He left early just to watch her do it again. We didn't have money. Old couch, ugly carpet, tiny kitchen. But it was ours. And love made it feel big. Things were normal then. She was a good student, had friends, came home with paint on her fingers, and stories about school plays. Her laughter used to fill the apartment. She was happy. So was I. My daughter was bossing me around. But when I look back now, I realize the signs were always there, like little stains I ignored, because the whole picture felt bright. I remember one afternoon. She was maybe 8. The neighbor's daughter came to play. I asked Jade to share her toys. She refused. Not childlike stubbornness, but with a sharpness that felt too mature. For someone her age, my daughter was bossing me around. She gathered her toys, carried them all to her room, locked the door. I sat outside her room, explaining gently about kindness, about generosity, about what it means to care for others. She nodded, but she never shared. Another memory. She was 12. I'd hidden $100 in a drawer. For emergencies. She found it. Saw a dress she wanted. I told her no. That we needed that money. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stopped talking to me. For 3 days, my daughter was bossing me around. When she finally spoke again, she acted like nothing happened. But the money was gone. I never saw it again. And she never mentioned it. I should have paid more attention, should have asked harder questions. But when you're working all day, coming home exhausted, praying the bills get paid, sometimes it's easier to believe everything's okay.